Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. You lot are amazing and I probably don't tell you that enough. I am consistently touched by the generosity of subscribers, people who I've never met, people who send me emails and say, hey Jody, how you doing? I've just got such and such a watch and I'd love to send it to you for review. And they do, they send me watches sometimes worth thousands of dollars, having never met me. It's just incredible. Loan watches have become an increasingly important part of the channel mix, therefore. Not only does it give me access to stuff that I would never be able to review otherwise, not just expensive Swiss watches either, but plenty of Seikos, Timexes and Bulövas, etc. I also feel it's been really important helping me balance out the content mix, keeping it a nice mixture between bought, borrowed and sponsored videos. Now, some watches I am delighted to send back after the loan period has ends. I've given a number a roasting, always with permission of course. Others I don't want to send back at all. And this is one such watch. This is the Seiko SPD 185J1, the Mini Marine Master Reduced, Baby Marine Master, Steel Master, whatever you want to call it. It is absolutely stunning. It was sent to me by a subscriber called Matt, so big thank you to you, Matt. And I have spent the last 24 hours wondering how I can buy one of these for myself. But should I buy one? I vowed after the disappointment of the Willard that I bought last year that I wouldn't spend big money on a Seiko again, and this is by no means perfect. I'm actually going to flip it today and I'm going to start with the negs before moving on to the positives, and then what I think I'll do in terms of my strategy about picking one of these up, potentially. Anyway, let's flip the camera and get on with it. So it's the SPB185, I believe I said SPD185 in the intro. Damn you Seiko and your confusing nomenclature. There are actually two different versions of this watch available, the 185 and the 187. Now the 187 is blue-black. I've never really understood blue-black in combination. I just don't get the colorway. If Matt had bought the blue-black and sent me it, I'm sure I would have said it was a lovely watch, but I wouldn't be in the particular quandary that I find myself in today because Matt didn't buy the blue-black. He bought the stainless steel version. I mean, just look at that thing. It is absolutely beautiful. Black dial, mixed finish on those hands. One side is brushed, one side is polished. Stainless steel brushed bezel. Some fabulous case finishing, which I'll show you in more detail later on. And that tiny little bit of red on the paddle second. Just perfect. I've seen plenty of people modify their Seikos of various flavors with stainless steel bezels to look like this, but it is so rare that Seiko actually produces one from the factory with this bezel. I think that is why I find it so appealing. Now the price, you know how obsessed I am with price and money. The Aussie list price for these is 1900 AUD. However, as always, you'd be a fool to pay retail. I found it from a jeweler, a relatively local jeweler, for 1500. I think the US list price is about 1200, kind of 1600 Canadian. It kind of varies depending on your region. I'll circle back to price later on. I paid a similar amount for the Willard last year and I was so upset with the Willard when I got it that I flipped it within 24 hours. But this one, I think I could see this one being a long-term keeper for me. Again, I shall explain why. So basic dimensions and specifications. It's a 42 mil in diameter across the case anyway, but as you can see there, the bezel is only about a 40.5. Now, I've heard various websites quote 12.5 mil thick. I don't measure that on my calipers. I measure it at 13.3. However, it has an eminently wearable 48.5 lug to lug. 20mm lug width, there's a bit of taper down to 18, back up to 20 at the clasp. Fairly sizable though, it is 175 grams sized up for me. Matt put an extra link in it for me, much appreciated. I've still got a bit of leeway here. I've been going kind of back and forth between a couple of the different micro adjust holes on the clasp. So full stainless steel construction, including that bezel insert brushed. We have a 120 click unidirectional rotating dive time bezel, which on Matt's example, hallelujah, actually lines up at 12. The bezel action is okay, if not outstanding, but certainly nothing I'm going to complain about. There's a piece of flat sapphire crystal covering the dial with anti-reflective undercoating, screw down crown at the 4 o'clock, 200 meters of water resistance, hence MM200 Baby Marine Master, etc, etc. The proper Marine Master is about 3 times the price of this one though, so it certainly has its appeals. Bracelet, it's a 3-link bracelet featuring Seiko's pin and collar system. I'm delighted that Matt added that extra link in for me because the pin and collar system is a bit of a footer. It's a bit of a fidget. Now, Matt is a bit of an odd fish himself because he wears the bracelet back to front. I've never seen this. I know Seiko do it on a lot of their dress watches. They put the deployants on back to front. I didn't ask Matt why, but I certainly wasn't going to swap it over. It's not something I'm overly concerned with wearing it for a few days myself. The clasp is nice high polished edge there, Seiko print, 4 holes of micro adjust, and it has a diver's extension built in as well. It's one of those nice and neat ones. I think you flick that down, hold on, you get your thumbnail. Now I've just clipped my fingernail, so it's not that easy. You get your fingernail underneath there and you push it down, and that gives you an extra 1.5 centimeters, 2 centimeters if you do want to wear this one over a wetsuit at the weekend. Now the movement in these is a Seiko in-house 6R35. It's effectively the updated version of the old 6R15 that used to power the SARBs, the Alpinists and various other mid-tier Seiko watches. 24 dual hacking and hand winding, bi-directional winding. It's got their DiaShock system as well. They've pumped the power reserve up to 70 hours, which is not inconsiderable and not to be sniffed at therefore. Retains the old beat rate, 3 Hz, 21,600 vibrations per hour, so 6 ticks per second. It doesn't have that high beat, smooth sweep. I'm always a little bit worried when I put a 6R movement on the time grapher because they do vary considerably. Stated tolerances, minus 15 seconds per day to plus 25 seconds per day. However, I'm delighted, I'm sure Matt will be delighted to see that he got a good one here, running very, very nicely indeed. Plus 3 seconds per day, that'll do the job. So that's the basics then, but what are my moans and niggles? Let's bring them up to the front end of the review today rather than the back end as usual. Well, I guess I have got 5. 2 of them concern the bracelet, no surprises. Seiko bracelets aren't the best in the world. The first though concerns the crown. $1,200 US, 1,900 Aussie, and they can't be bothered signing the crown. I know this is a retro reissue, but you can't use that as an excuse every time, Seiko. A little S, a little bit of love, a little bit of something rather than a dollar crown on a $1,200 watch next time, please. Bracelet, again $1,200 watch, plenty of end link rattle, visible end link rattle, and it is on both sides. Also, Seiko bracelets are usually good enough rather than outstanding, and this one is no different. And as usual, absolutely no attempt to get that end link to integrate with the case properly. The bracelet looks like it was designed by a separate group of people for an entirely separate watch. And again, $1,200 watch with a printed logo. I would have loved to have seen a little applied logo, perhaps in brushed stainless steel to match that brushed stainless steel bezel. That would have taken this watch to the next level, and I don't think it's too much of an ask considering the outlay. And my 5th complaint, I guess, does not pertain specifically to this watch because, as discussed, it seems that Matt has a good example. He has a solid 6R35 and everything lines up as it should. But I would not be buying one of these online myself, regardless of how cheap it was, because I do not have any faith in Seiko's quality control standards these days, even when you're spending this much money on a watch. This one does not have a chapter ring, or at least it does not have a marked chapter ring. There's just a nice piece of steel there, so that's one thing that we don't have to concern ourselves with. But I have watched several other videos and seen several other loom pips not aligned with the index at 12. The last thing I want for me personally is to spend big bucks on a watch, peel off the stickers and be disappointed. So if I do buy one of these, I will be going into the shop personally to inspect it. Is it too cheeky for me to take along the Weishi 1000 and ask to pop it on the time grapher to ensure the 6R35 is a good one? Let me know. Leave me a comment whether you think that is taking things a little bit too far. But apart from those aforementioned moans and niggles, I am in love with this watch. The standard of case finishing is absolutely outstanding. It's got that Seiko deep, rich Zaratsu polish. We have got a longitudinally brushed upper surface to the lugs. The transitions are all smooth and clean and crisp. And there's that lovely high polish undercut as well, which makes it so comfortable to wear. We've got drilled lugs. If you do want to take it off the bracelet and put it on a distressed leather strap or something, it would look absolutely absolutely exceptional. That brush bezel insert is fantastic also. It really is perfect. And the dial and handset, unmistakably Seiko. It really couldn't be anything else looking like that, could it? Applied indexes, you've got that kind of extended triangle at 12, slightly different from the original watch from the 1960s. Large, slightly angled batons at the 6 and 9, circular indexes everywhere else. And there's that little truncated baton just squeezing next to the date window there at the 3 o'clock. I'm happy that they didn't colour match the date wheel. I think the white date wheel, not only is it more visible than a black date wheel, it actually balances out the big index over there at the 9 o'clock. So I'm not going to complain about that on this occasion anyway. High polished silver surrounds to all of those indices, and you can see a meniscus of lume. Seiko's Lumi Bright, of course. I will pop the lume video up in just a second. I love the handset as well. Big, broad, super legible, and the fact that one side is polished, one side is brushed. I've seen them do this on some of their pressage models before, but I can't remember seeing it on a diver. And that tiny, tiny little bit of red on the end of the second hand really sets the whole thing off. I think it needs that. It could look a little too austere with all of this black and stainless steel. It just needed that tiniest, tiniest little bit of colour. And it looks great under macro as well. No rough edges anywhere. You wouldn't be expecting rough edges at this price though, would you? And the aforementioned Lumi Bright really is fantastic. This is their own proprietary lume. Perhaps not as outrageous as the Sumo that I looked at a couple of months ago, but certainly you're not going to be complaining about this one after dark. Lasts plenty of time too. So I love the way it looks. I also love the way it wears. I gave the watch a wind, I put it on wrist, and it just felt like Cinderella's slipper. It felt like it was made for me. I've got a 7-inch wrist for your reference. I mentioned the Sumo a few minutes ago. It does remind me of the Sumo in terms of the case profile, the case shape, but this is far, far more wearable than the Sumo. This one just fits me beautifully. 170 grams, normally a bit bigger than I would go for, and like I said, the bracelet is kind of okay, if not outstanding. It does at least keep the thing in balance. Personally, I would be tending to wear a watch this size and weight above the knuckle and slightly tighter, but it looks sensational and it just fits a dream. And believe me, I have had a few Seikos on my wrist over the years. I pretty much have tried them all. But when I put this one on, I knew it was a little bit special. Perhaps you won't feel the same way. Perhaps you'll think it's too small. Perhaps you'll think it's too big. Perhaps you'll think it's too boring and too austere with that stainless steel bezel. But it's definitely the Goldilocks porridge for me, this one. And that said, outside, I admit it is a bit of an austere colourway, even with that tiny little red dot. You know, it doesn't change the fact that it is a black dial. There's plenty of stainless steel here. There's not a lot else going on, but I've always been into black dial watches personally. I love the fact that this one has that stainless steel bezel. It really sets it off. On wrist, those mid links of the bracelet do have a high polished edge to it. Plus there's obviously that Zaratsu polishing from the case itself. So there is quite a bit of light play. And when I show you the down the wrist look at that curvature. It is just perfect. 48.5 lug to lug. Do I sound like I'm in love? I think I might be in love. And that's the pocket shot. I finally relented. I'm back in jeans for the winter. It is a positively bitter 18 degrees centigrade here in Sydney today. Looks amazing, I think, from the pocket shot as well. Now, stainless steel bezel insert, not ceramic. It is going to scuff and scratch. I'm kind of okay with that because of this stainless steel brushed effect. If you're interested in the other one, the black and blue one, do bear that in mind as well. If you want a ceramic bezel insert, but you want a Seiko, go for one of the King Samurais, go for one of the King Turtles. They're much, much cheaper, and you're not going to scratch the bezel insert. Clearly, I'm a little bit smitten, aren't I? I know this watch isn't outstanding value for money. I know that there are question marks around Seiko's quality control processes or lack thereof as mentioned. So if I do end up with one, I would definitely want to have a good look at it in person. I would recommend that if you are interested in one of these, you try and get a look at the watch that you're buying before you commit to the purchase, or you don't peel off the stickers and have a good look at it so you can always send it back to wherever you bought it from if you're not happy with it. But it just has something, this watch. It has a little bit of the magic about it. I love the stainless steel bezel. I love the simplicity. I love the case finishing. I love the overall look. I love the way it wears on me as well. Big question is therefore, am I prepared to stump up 1,500 Aussie dollars for one? You'll have to stay tuned to find out, I guess. So there you have it, the Seiko Steelmaster, an absolute stunner of a watch. It was like Cinderella putting on that glass slipper the first time I put this one on my wrist. I just don't want to take it off, but I also don't want to spend 1,500 Australian dollars on a Seiko with quality control issues. So I'm probably going to go and try and have a look at one or two of these, hopefully in jeweler shops next week. If I can find one that everything lines up, then maybe, just maybe, I will actually take the plunge and buy one. Is it too cheeky to take along my Weishi 1000? Leave me a comment, let me know what you think about that. Thanks for watching, thanks again to Matt. I will see you in a future video.